In its place rested a gleaming deck of cards, tied with a delicate satin ribbon. Then, in a flash, it was back to the nasty pouch before it transfigured into the cards again. Abandoning her play mission, Tella quickly grabbed the silky cord and lifted the deck from the box. Instantly, they stopped shifting. The cards were so very, very pretty. Such a dark hue of nightshade, they were almost black, with tiny hints of gold flecks that sparkled in the light, and swirly strands of deep red-violet embossing that made Tella think of damp flowers, witch's blood, and magic. These were nothing like the flimsy black and white cards her father's guards had taught her to play betting games with. Tella sat down on the carpet. Her nimble fingers tingled as she untied the ribbon and flipped over the first card. The young woman pictured reminded Tella of a captive princess. Her lovely white dress was shredded, and her tear-shaped eyes were as pretty as polished sea glass, but so sad they hurt to look at. Most likely because her head was caged in a rounded globe of pearls. The words, "The Maiden Death," were written at the bottom of the card. Tella shuddered. She did not like the name, and she was not fond of cages, even pearly ones. Suddenly, she had the feeling that her mother would not want her seeing these cards. But that didn't stop Tella from turning over another. The name at the bottom of this one was the Prince of Hearts. It showed a young man with a face made of angles and lips as sharp as two knife blades. One hand near his pointed chin clasped the hilt of a dagger, and red tears fell from his eyes, matching the blood staining the corner of his narrow mouth. Tella flinched as the prince's image flickered, there and gone, the same way the foul sachet had wavered earlier. She should have stopped then. These cards were definitely not toys. Yet a part of her felt as if she was meant to find them. They were more real than the evil queen or the elfin prince of her imagination, and Tella dared to think that perhaps they would lead her on a genuine adventure. The next card felt especially warm against her fingers as Tella turned it over. The Oracle. She did not know what the strange name meant, and unlike the other cards, this one did not appear to be violent. The edges were covered in ornate swirls of molten gold, and the center was silver like a mirror. No, it was a mirror. The shining middle reflected Tella's honey-blonde curls and her round hazel eyes. But when Tella looked closer, the image was wrong. Tella's pink lips were trembling, and fat tears were running down her cheeks. Tella never cried, not even when her father used harsh words, or Felipe ignored her in favor of her older sister. "I wondered if I'd find you in here, my little love." Her mother's soft soprano filled the room as she swept inside. "What adventures are you having today?" As her mother bent toward the carpet where Tella sat, her hair fell around her clever face in elegant rivers. Her mother's locks were the same dark brown as Scarlett's, but Tella shared her mother's olive skin, which gleamed as if she'd been kissed by the stars. Though just then, Tella watched her mother turn moonstone pale as her eyes latched on to the upturned images of the Maiden Death and the Prince of Hearts. "Where did you find these?" Her mother's sweet voice remained, but her hand swiftly snatched the cards, giving Tella the impression she'd done something very wrong. And while Tella often did things she wasn't supposed to, usually her mother didn't mind. She'd gently correct her daughter, or occasionally tell her how to get away with her little crimes. It was her father who was easily angered. Her mother was the soft breath of air that blew out his sparks before they could ignite into flames. But now, her mother looked as if she wanted to start a fire and use the cards for kindling. "I found them in your jewelry box," Tella said. "I'm sorry."